Hello, everyone, and welcome to the release notes meeting for the 4th of August, 2026. That's when this release happened. We've got a lot of great stuff this time, honestly. I'm really happy with some of the new changes to Fieldcode. I think they're really going to improve the way you guys operate with Fieldcode. I hope you feel the same way. And of course, let us know what you think of these changes so that we can continue to make improvements in the future. What you should see in front of you now is Demo Swift Tech, which is the demo environment I typically use when I'm giving demonstrations of Fieldcode, and we're specifically within the dispatch view. And there's a few things I want to talk to you about today when it comes to this particular view. Let's start with this, though. It used to be that you could only select one dispatch group at a time to view within the dispatch view. And that was fine if you're only working with one dispatch group, or if you're only responsible for one dispatch group, or if that's all you need to see. But we have made a small change. I think it's a huge improvement for a lot of people, and that is that we can view more than one dispatch group at a time. So right now I'm looking at Jacksonville, Florida, but instead, let's say I want to see Bavaria and Berlin. If I select Bavaria and Berlin, we see here that both of those dispatch groups are shown, and they're actually also showing as well on the timeline here for us. And there's some changes to the timeline as well. We'll go over that in a moment. But we can see that they're separated here for us with Bayern on top and Berlin underneath. And you can still see the subgroups. So Bayern does not have any subgroups, but Berlin has north and south. So you can still see the subgroups within those areas there. This will allow you to schedule tickets to both of these dispatch groups at the same time. If for some reason I want to assign a ticket that's for Bavaria to the Berlin group, I could do that. And I can also see which groups each ticket belongs to, because we have a new tab called our dispatch groups tab, or column, a new column called our dispatch groups column here in the ticket pool. So whenever you need to see which dispatch group a ticket belongs to, if you select to have that column shown, then you'll see it there wherever you happen to place it. So you can't always move the columns around, like so, for example. And so now that's in the second spot, and my info alert and parts are in the first spot instead. Or I can leave it at the front, and I can scroll through and see which tickets are for which group. So we have a mixture here of Berlin and Bayern tickets. There are some implications when it comes to optimization, though, and that is that the optimizer can still only optimize for one group at a time. So when I go to optimize and I have more than one group selected, if I hit the optimize button, it's going to ask me first for which group do I want to optimize. So in this case, I'll choose Bayern, and I hit continue, and then it will bring up the regular menu that I'm used to seeing. And we'll go ahead and schedule for tomorrow because today is almost finished there in Bavaria. And give that just a moment to load. So that's one key restriction is you can still only run the optimizer for one group at a time, even when more than one group is showing. But that's just to make sure that there's isn't any kind of crossover or any kind of hangups in the system. Now, there is something a little bit different about our Optimize Now screen here. So our optimizer is running, but we can now resize this as we need to. So I can stretch this over to see the full day. And if I want to as well, I can go ahead and actually just pull this down just a little bit. There we go. And I can go ahead and move this over just a little bit. Another thing that you may have noticed is it began at the beginning of the day. It used to be that this would, when you would start the optimizer, it would start from midnight over here, and you just have a bunch of gray area, and you really couldn't see what was going on. You could always scroll over, of course, but the problem was that you had to actually scroll over. Now it just starts from that first hour and runs on through, but you can stretch it out to be able to see the entire day or the entire period that you are trying to optimize for. We'll go ahead and discard that for now, and we'll go ahead and put these back to being Jacksonville showing. So I mentioned that there's a new timeline here, and there's a few things about this new timeline that I really like. Now, this is the timeline beta, and how you access this is that you open up the Optimize dropdown, and you'll see an option. Right now it says go back to the old timeline. If I switch back to the old timeline, there we are. We're back at the old timeline. And switch that 12 hours. There we go. But if I open up, It says try the new timeline, and we do encourage you do try this new timeline. Give us your feedback. But there's some things I really, really love about this new timeline. So for example, I can get a lot more precise with this new timeline. Let me go ahead and zoom in just a little bit and just get down to 1 day. Ooh, a little bit less. There we go. And if I go ahead and drag and drop a ticket out there onto the timeline and say I want this to begin at 11 o'clock, then there it is. It begins at 11 o'clock, and I can see my drive time before and after. But things are no longer rounded to the nearest hour or the nearest 15 minutes. It's now, I can just pull this over just a little bit. And now, instead, I'm going to begin at 11:06, right? Excuse me, yeah, at 11:06 to 12:36 is an hour and a half long ticket. So I can get quite precise with when I want that time to begin. And it's also clearer on the timeline when you're looking at it that it doesn't actually begin at 11, it's beginning at 11:06. This is important because previously with the old timeline, this would appear to begin at 11 o'clock, or it might be pushed over to look like it's beginning at 11:15 when we're looking at it from this sort of distance. And that can create a bit of confusion as to when the time's actually beginning and so forth. So we get a little bit more precision there with that. Some other things, guys, that we can actually zoom out pretty far. In fact, we can zoom out up to 48 hours total. So if I hold control and I scroll out, then we see that timeline move out there. I'm going to go ahead and reset this to where I want it to be, which is going to be starting at 7 a.m. And there we go. Now I can see from 7 a.m. In the morning Jacksonville time, which was about 1300 today in Germany, all the way to just before 7 a.m. in 2 days. So we can see a couple days at a time here, but we can also scroll along and see further into the future or into the past as we need to. So there is no longer a limitation there of seeing only 1 day at a time or only seeing 24 hours at a time. Now we can scroll along as we need to or as we see fit to find the time that we want to look at. You can use as well the trackpad if you do it properly. Use 2 fingers on trackpad to zoom in, zoom out, and so forth. So all of your standard scrolling options to scroll in and scroll out, you can use that here to zoom in and zoom out on that timeline and see as much or as little as you want to see at any given moment. We strongly encourage you, please check out this new feature. There is not yet a page in the online manual for the timeline beta. I think we've mentioned on the timeline page that there is a timeline beta, but we haven't set up a separate page for it. There will be a separate page set up for that very soon, and we'll have links to that from the regular timeline page. So you'll go to the manual, go to the regular timeline page, and you'll see a link that will take you to the timeline beta, where you can see further instructions about how to operate with the timeline beta and how to join it, how to get out of it, and what differences there are between it and others. Another thing that's particularly helpful about this timeline and being able to select more than one group at a time is, for example, let's go ahead and choose that Berlin and Bayern again, is if you have a setup like timeline large here, you can see multiple groups on one timeline going across, and then you can just zoom or scroll or zoom as you need to see what you need to see for those groups. So I'm particularly excited about this. I think it's a really nice improvement, a huge quality of life improvement for dispatchers and for managers in general. But we do want to hear from you. We want to hear what your opinions are regarding that. We also have a new or some improved ways to keep track of users and update user information. So if we come here to the admin panel, I've set up a new permission called supervisor, and this can edit some user details. And of course, what can it edit? Well, we come here to security resources, we can see that here. So we can parse now more specifically what we want a person to be able to access when accessing the users page on the admin panel. Now, all admins have full access to the user page, but if you want someone who's acting as a manager, or maybe the supervisor manager, you can create a new permission that will give them greater access, like this one here. So this one was originally based on the manager, and then I added these additional permissions for the admin panel where they can view the user's page. So they can view everything on the user's page, but they can only edit things under location, the temporary locations, absences and availabilities, their skills, delivery, and ban conditions. I didn't want them being able to edit their roles because roles are permissions. So I don't want them being able to give another user more permissions than they already have, or to take away permissions from them. I wanted that to be something higher up, so that's how I left that. And I also made it so they can't change the basic contact data for that user. So they can't change their email address, their phone number, or the basic contact details for that user. That's what I chose to set up for this year. Of course, you should set this up according to your particular needs. And there's one other section here that's pretty important as well, and that's the user admin filters. And that decides who, with this permission set that I'm building, who they can actually edit. Now, in this particular scenario, I've set up so there's no limit. They can edit all users. They have full permissions. And I find it useful to set up a more overarching permission and then create another permission that has the greater limitations. So you always have one that to dispatch groups that they manage. Then I could simply select that there. Or if I want them just to be able to edit certain dispatch groups, I can come in here and select the dispatch groups I want them to be able to edit for. And of course, there are other permissions here that we can have them filtered by. So we can decide we only want them dealing with people from a certain project or from a certain city or a certain country or so forth. Now, once you set that permission up, a person can access a user by right-clicking on that user and go to Edit User Admin Panel. And what that will do is it will actually open the admin panel on a new tab for them directly to that user. So now they can see everything here and they can come through and edit as appropriate. Now I can edit roles, of course, because I have full admin rights. So we're not seeing that same limitation that I put on that other set of permissions here. But understand that if you put limitations on that person, there may be certain tabs they can't see or access, or there may be tabs that they can see but they can't edit within. So you can still give them permission to see certain information, but not be able to change that permission. And let's go ahead and go back to our users tab here because there is something new about the users tab as well. Let's cancel that there. There we go. Previously, if you created a custom field for users, you had no way of seeing it from here. You could go into the user and you could see it. So down here, we can see, that Felix Adler here has no assigned supervisor, but I've created this special field here called the engineer supervisor, and that field would then identify who's in charge of that particular engineer. It's empty on him, but we could always fill that in. But now we can actually see that from out here. So if you choose the pancake icon, that's this 3 lines with the 3 dots on it. I call it the pancake icon because it looks like 3 pancakes stacked with some syrup dripping down. Some people refer to that to a hamburger icon, but they would be wrong. So you can open that up and you can choose which fields that you're going to see. And I've already selected here to see the engineer supervisor. And then I can go ahead and sort by that. And so, for example, I can see now that Dominic Benjamin, Jack Carlson, Jolene Parton, and Joseph Platt, all within Jacksonville, Florida, they all answer to Bernard Anderson. So Bernard Anderson is their supervisor, and that's already been added in there. So to create those permissions or those custom fields, by the way, because I know that people have forgotten how to do that, we come here to our homepage under custom fields under Fieldcode Plus, which should be accessible to anyone of any level of field code, whether you have start, business, or enterprise, you'll be able to access this. You come here, you hit the plus sign, you give it the custom field a name. It needs to be a unique name, and then you're going to choose the object, and that's what we're referring to here when we say the user. That user object will always appear in that on the user's contact page there. So we would select user, give it a name, and then we just select the type of field that we want to add in. give it a label, and so forth from there, just like you would with any other custom fields. If you have questions about custom fields or if you need assistance in setting those up, please reach out to us at support@fieldcode.com. We'll be happy to get on a quick call with you and walk you through that process. There's, of course, some instructions as well in the online manual that were recently cleaned up and made a little bit better for you guys to make things clearer and easier to understand. All right, and there are just a few more things. I'm going to jump back here to our Fieldcode Workplace, and we're going to open up the side here. There are three more things I want to quickly mention that I can't show you myself in my own environment, but we do have some screenshots of them. So we're just going to go ahead and open up our release notes here. By the way, if you have other questions about the release notes or you just want to read further about it, you can open up that side panel and go to the release notes for the 4th of August, 2026, and you'll find those all here with beautiful photos and everything created for you by Simeon. And the first thing I want to talk about is the API key deletion confirmation. So we've all been there. We've all accidentally deleted an API key and then had a solution engineer come and scream at us and threaten to get us fired. Oh, wait, is that just me? Probably just me. But in any case, now we're going to make sure that you actually intend to delete an API key before you do so, because that can cause some pretty serious problems if we don't do that. So now we're going to make sure that you intend to delete the API key before you do so. And the warning will appear like so. Deleting this API key will cause errors on endpoints where it is used. It cannot be recovered. Are you sure? And of course, the answer is cancel. You don't want to delete your API key because if you do, you might have someone quite upset with you. There's also character limit warning now when you are searching within the X pool or the ticket pool. So whenever you do a query under the General tab here, or if you're within the X pool, there will be a warning about that. Now let me just find that one real quick. Well, the limitation is 20,000 characters. And if you exceed that 20,000 characters, then you'll get a warning saying that your query is too long. Now, 20,000 characters sounds like it's a lot of characters, and under normal circumstances, it would be. But there are times when you might be targeting a very specific user or object within Fieldcode. And if you use the user's actual identification code from the background, for example, if you go to deactivate a user, let me go ahead and show you what that looks like real quick. If I go to deactivate a user, nope, that's not users. Let me go to users. And if I go to deactivate this user, we'll get a warning down here at the bottom, and it will tell us that we should search within the general tab of the ticket pool for this query here. And this query here says current appointment user ID. So that user ID for this particular user is quite long. Actually, it's right there. And so if you have a query that looks for several objects like this, then your query might extend beyond 20,000 characters rather quickly. So 20,000 characters sounds like a lot at first until you start to consider situations like this. And when that happens, when you exceed those 20,000 characters, then you're going to find that warning. Let me see if I could create that warning right now, actually. If I do this and I paste that in a couple of times into the workplace, then it should perhaps give me that warning if I give it enough times in here. There we go. Too many characters. So that's a simple little warning. Too many characters. That's what will pop up if you have too many characters in there. And of course, to quickly delete that, we can just hit this X here and remove that there. So if you exceed 20,000 characters, you'll see a little warning that says there are too many characters in your query, and that will prevent you from doing that. And then the final thing I want to show you real quick today is that we now have a workflow column for the X pool. And workflow column here, we're referring to the status of a particular asset or so forth. So in this case, we have a bunch of assets here, and the workflow status for each is either in service, new, in deployment, maintenance, and so forth, repair. And so these workflow warning or statuses here can let us know if those devices are up and in service, down, if they've been currently deployed, or if they are in the middle of being deployed, or so forth. And that is now available to you as something you can add to your assets to keep track of their current statuses. And that concludes everything for this release for the 4th of August 2026. If you have any questions or if any new queries come up, please write to support@fieldcode.com. Please do take the time to check out that new timeline beta. Let us know what you think. Let us know of any improvements that you'd like to see to it, or something doesn't work right for any reason. We want to know. We want to get that fixed as quickly as possible. So support@fieldcode.com is going to be your point of contact for making sure that you are seeing or that you are getting the proper support that you need and that you're giving us the feedback that we need to continue to improve field code. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.